When representing evil, Bermejo came up with an odd, frightening composite being. But when he paints good, his technique is just as exquisite, but instead of creating a fantastical beast, he works with the things of this earth. My name is Daniel Sobrino Ralston, and I'm the CEEH Fellow in Spanish Paintings here at the National Gallery. Today, I'll be talking about this extraordinary painting of Saint Michael triumphing over the devil, which was painted in Spain by Bartolomé Bermejo at about the end of the 1460s. I'll be trying to answer a question. Why is this demon sprouting serpents? And what does that tell us about how artists represent good and evil? Towering over us is the archangel Saint Michael, an absolute vision with technicolor wings and glittering golden armor. He raises a sword above his head, about to strike down at the demon that he's pinned against the ground. In the book of Revelations, Saint Michael leads an army of angels into battle against the devil and his hosts and casts them down from heaven. This is the moment we're looking at here, the defeat of evil by the forces of good. Bermejo's demon, the devil incarnate, is a strange and grotesque creature. It has a toothy, gaping maw, and on its head are two large horns and a forest of spikes. And then there are those unsettling, jewel-like red eyes. And then it also seems to be growing a cactus out of the top of its head. The more closely you look, the weirder it gets. The devil's torso is another face, and its nipples are eyes. And out of that grinning mouth that opens up on its stomach slithers a snake, which looks like it's making its way toward the man who's kneeling beside Saint Michael. The snake slides along underneath one of the devil's hind legs, and the upper part of the leg, which Bermejo shows us upside down, is another snake, out of whose mouth extends a scaly, avian leg. The devil's upper arms look just the same. They're snakes that seem to be either eating or disgorging scaled limbs. And if you look up, you can see that the devil has wrapped his spiked tail around the archangel's leg. Of course, the devil has wings too, ones that are dull and moth-like, the opposite of Saint Michael's brilliant ones. There's something that strikes us now as a little funny about this serpentine demon. It's easy to read the expression almost as a smile of sorts, and the gesture that it makes rings a little false. But in the late Gothic period, when this panel was painted, this was probably quite a fearsome image, depicting a beast unlike anyone had ever seen in real life, and yet, because of the extraordinary detail with which it was painted, a beast that was plausible, the stuff of nightmares. This kind of imagery could have come from print sources or perhaps even medieval bestiaries, which compiled different kinds of animals and beings. By creating unnatural creatures composed of the mismatched parts of different animals, like this one, artists could demonstrate their creativity and their ability to depict evil in new and terrifying ways. And the Bible refers to the devil as both a serpent and a dragon, so there are already visual models to play with. Representations of the devil seem to have been a special opportunity for 15th century artists like Bermejo to have a little creative fun. In a work made by the anonymous Spanish painter known as the Maestro Belmonte, we see a memorably weird devil that has some of the same characteristics as Bermejo's, although it's painted with considerably less skill. Bermejo, as we can see in this painting, was an absolute master of illusionism, one of the greatest Spanish painters of the 15th century. He even painted the plants so realistically that we can be sure of what they are. And the plants continue the painting's symbolism. On either side of the devil's upraised wrist, we see foxglove and mandrake, which both have evil connotations. The poppy in the lower right-hand corner, whose petals are close to the color used for the devil's eyes and the spots on its wings, was linked with death, and so its placement near the devil, who is about to be defeated, can only be intentional. Bermejo, also known as Bartolomé de Cárdenas, was born in the city of Córdoba in southern Spain sometime around 1440. We don't know exactly when he was born, and we don't know when he died, but he was last documented in Barcelona in 1501. This is just one of two paintings that he signed in his career. On the unfolded piece of paper in the painting are the words Bartolomeus Rubius. Rubius is the Latin for red, and it's the translation of his nickname, Bermejo, which means red or reddish in Spanish. He was an itinerant artist who traveled widely in search of work all across eastern Spain. While we have scattered information about his whereabouts throughout his career, we don't know where he trained and how he came to develop such an extraordinary facility for painting in oil. The technique, which allowed for great richness of color and fine detail, had first been perfected by painters from Northern Europe, like Jan van Eyck or Hans Memling. Bermejo's repertoire of stylistic effects was highly refined, and it's almost certain that he had seen paintings by artists from the Low Countries, which were collected by Spanish rulers and merchants. This painting is his first documented commission, which he made at the request of Anthony Joan, Lord of Tus, who was portrayed beside St. Michael. Joan requested that Bermejo paint St. Michael, which was likely the center of an altarpiece, for the church of San Miguel in Tus, a town southwest of Valencia. Bermejo's portrait of Joan is incredibly refined. His gray purple silk gown has been carefully described, and we can read most of the lines in the psalter that he holds. Another example of Bermejo's utterly masterful manipulation of oil paint is the stunning fabric of St. Michael's cloak, which has billowing gold and red pockets, which create spaces of light and shadow across the picture. When representing evil, Bermejo came up with an odd, frightening composite being. But when he paints good, his technique is just as exquisite, but instead of creating a fantastical beast, he works with the things of this earth, but heightens them to the edge of reality. St. Michael is surreal. The figure is graceful and beautiful, and his body traces a curve across the center line of the painting. He wears a jewel-encrusted diadem and seemingly otherworldly armor. The armor, however, is very much real. The detail that Bermejo has included makes it probable that he worked from a real suit of Italian field armor from the 1460s that had been made for export to Western Europe. But he did take some license with his material. The fact that the armor is gilded gold across the entire suit, as well as the plentiful jewels and pearls that decorate it, and you can see some if you look closely at the lower part of the chest armor, which is called a placard, and you can see the rubies and sapphires that alternate along the edge. This armor, while it was based on reality, goes far beyond it. And similarly, the domed boss on the small shield or buckler is meant to be rock crystal, an extraordinarily precious and fragile material. No earthly soldier would ever carry anything like that. St. Michael fought the devil outside the gates of the heavenly Jerusalem, and on the archangel's chest armor, as well as just below that, a little bit more faintly, we can see a ghostly outline of the city's walls. Bermejo likely picked up this idea from northern painting. The astounding sheen of the armor, which is really just a plain metal surface, becomes, in Bermejo's hands, another image, another piece of decoration, an imagined divine location, which the patron, Anthony Joan, looks up at, and he hopes that he'll be able to get to with the help of the altarpiece. Whether depicting good or evil, Bermejo's capacity for invention is astounding. Combining together mythical and hideous beasts, he gives us a potent vision of evil. And by suggesting a world more beautiful than one that could ever exist, he tells us what he and his viewers hoped they might eventually see. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.